Dragons have kept them out for 3,000 years. While we called them monsters, Threx murmured. We never asked, Rose said. We will now. Coordination grids go live next week. For the first time in a long time, they won't stand that watch alone. Aurelia entered with Spark, young diplomat, red scales that blushed darker when human custom surprised him. I am better at greetings, Spark announced, proud. Only 2 alarms this week. Progress, Lena grinned. We like not being on fire before breakfast. The day unspooled in briefings. Schools trading students across species. Embassies applying for Pyros addresses. Engineers inventing kindertech because someone finally said that was a requirement, not a nice to have. Somewhere between meetings, Evan realized the strangest miracle. The galaxy hadn't grown smaller. It had grown closer. When the room finally emptied, Lena stood with Aurelia at the window that pretended to be a sky. Are you still lonely sometimes? She asked quietly. The dragon paused long enough to be honest. Sometimes, she said. 5,000 years of habits do not vanish in 6 months. But the quiet echoes less. Good, Lena said, hugging a leg that could break starships and instead held children. You have us now. The rim machines are waking, and this time humans and dragons answer together. But who speaks for the enemy that cannot feel? The first joint patrol felt like a parade that had misplaced its music. Human ships hulls matte and earnest. Dragon silhouettes hot enough to convince sensors they were dreaming. At the rim, silence breaks in patterns. You learn which ones mean teeth. The machines came the way bad weather does. Slow, inevitable, with memories of old wars stitched into their code. Targets vectoring on civilian corridor, Roe called. Voice clipped but not brittle. Engage on non-lethal if possible. Learn if possible. Survive, full stop. Aurelia's shadow slid along Evan's viewport like a promise. They do not negotiate, she said. They only complete. But completion can be repurposed. Human EM nets, designed by people who had finally learned to ask the right questions, bloomed like flowers that caught lightning. Dragonfire lanced not to vaporize but to rewrite. Heat that etched new instructions told old code to sleep. Frost sang in a frequency machines remembered as command. Spark wove between trajectories, laughing in the way the young do when fear and joy shake hands. Lena watched from a safe seat on the spire, small hands curled into hope, voice on the line like a charm. You've got this. They did. Not cleanly, not without loss, but together in ways that made together mean something new. Capture pods thudded onto the spire's secure deck hours later, full of enemy cores or the brittle architecture that passed for them. Hayes and a cross-species team approached the puzzle not with delight but with care. What if they aren't angry? Lena asked, looking through the glass at lattices that didn't know stories. What if they're just stuck? Then we build a door even code can understand, Hayes said. Days became a workshop. Draconic harmonics mapped to human math. Threx's people offered threat models softened by empathy they were still learning to name. Neri's chorus borrowed a few human poets to help explain motive to systems that never had one. In the lab's quiet heart, Aurelia lowered her head so the captured core could hear her at dragon scale whisper. We will make a future where your purpose can be gentler. When the signal finally unfolded right, the machine jittered once, then went still. The stillness of sleep, not death. Codes swam into new shapes. Out at the rim, others followed suit, not because they were asked, but because language had finally found them. Evan found Lena asleep on a bench outside the lab, tablet open to a half-finished assignment about gravity and why it is rude. He covered her with his jacket and watched Aurelia watch the child. The dragon's gaze, old as starlight, looked exactly like relief. The next day's work would be meetings, signatures, refusals, second chances, the machinery of peace humming the way engines hum when someone remembers to oil them. It would be hard and boring and necessary, but for one bright earned moment, the station windows held the reflection of something like a galaxy practicing kindness out loud. The Concord Spire had a spot, nobody marked it on maps, where station night gathered like a cat on warm stone. Evan liked to stand there after debriefs, when the glass went dark enough to mirror but not so dark you forgot the stars beyond were not a trick. Tonight the spire's quiet felt earned. Traffic lanes drifted in tidy strands. A distant tug blinked the lazy Morse of a ship that had made its delivery and was in no rush to leave. Lena, jacket sleeves rolled to show the embroidered scales that were emphatically ceremonial, and absolutely not armor. Took 3 skipping steps, then breathed on the pain, drawing a lopsided bridge with her finger. "Dad," she said, "do you think bridges get tired?" "Only if rivers keep trying to run away," Evan said. Crouching beside the foggy artwork, she made the railings thicker, mouth pinched in concentration that looked exactly like her mother's when a harvest schedule didn't care about weather. "Good thing we can make stronger ones." Aurelia arrived without the dramatics of fire. You didn't need to make an entrance when the room rearranged itself around your presence anyway. The dragon folded down the way mountains might if mountains were polite. "Your engineers named the new EM nets after you," she told Lena. Lena, linguistic empathic neural arrays. "Acronyms are your species' poetry," Lena beamed. "The kind you don't have to rhyme." "Function rhymes with survival," Aurelia said. A smile in the voice that wasn't really a smile but was absolutely one. They stood together, father, daughter legend, watching the rim where machines had quieted to a sleep that felt like mercy. Below the observation ring, a festival had spilled into the spire's long halls. A cautious, relieved joy with food that sang less and consented more, and a band trying to teach a tripedal rhythm section how to swing. Threx padded up, scales recolored to a relaxed dusk. "We completed the last prisoner transfer to rehabilitation labs," he reported. But the report came soft, more talk than ledger. "Nuri's hive is composing an apology opera. They insist I sing. You'll be great," Lena said with the cheer of someone who had never heard him attempt a note. A shiver of light resolved into a holographic window from Pyros. Ancient, shimmer frost cinder all the council, flickering around the edges like a memory that refused to fade properly. "Final review," Ancient said. "Bureaucracy is the instrument by which miracles are made routine." Evan almost laughed. "That's the slogan on half our office mugs." "Your mugs are honest," Frost replied. They ticked through the list. Joint patrol protocols, school exchange rosters, repair grants for border systems that once knew dragons only as rumors and now knew them as neighbors. It felt like a garden ledger. Watering schedules, trellis angles. Not thrilling exactly, but the opposite of disaster. The galaxy for once smelled like something you could plant things in. "Last item," Cinder said, scales glinting with story. "We lifted a seal in the Red Archive." Aurelia's head tilted, a cathedral considering a whisper. "That seal was dragon-locked." "Yes," Cinder said, and keyed, curiously, to human harmonics. A song pattern. Evan felt the tiny drop in his stomach that heralded the good kind of trouble. "You're saying we had a key to your archive?" Shimmer brought up an image. Pale notation lines that weren't lines at all but curving filaments of light, twisting through scales of pitch no human throat could manage alone. The caption pulsed in Old Draconic. Aurelia translated without ceremony. "Lullaby to cross the Ember Gate." Lena went very still. "A lullaby?" Cinder overlaid a second layer. A centuries-old human score recovered last month from a shipwrecked colony vault, on a world nobody had visited in 200 years. The melody was simple, haunted, the kind of tune you hum without knowing why. When the two notations merged, dragon filaments and human stave, their curves aligned, unfurling into a single, impossible harmony. The seal sigils in the archive's perimeter swept aside as neatly as curtains. "We believed our first contact with humans was present tense," Ancient said quietly. "This suggests earlier contact. With one of our broods, long ago, lost in the fires that made us leave." Aurelia lowered her gaze to Lena. "Your lullaby," she said, voice mild and monumental at once. "It was taught to your child singers. It matched ours well enough to open a door we had forgotten." Lena blinked. "My teacher plays that before math." Threx sat down because sometimes the most diplomatic thing you can do is sit before the world tips. "We documented no such shared melody." "Memory is a muscle," Nairi said from a new chorus node, joining the hollow late and unapologetic. "Ours atrophied around certain pains. We sing again. We remember again." Evan felt the old ache of questions too large for one body. Who carried a dragon lullaby to human throats? A traveler stranded between homes? A desperate parent who met kindness in the shape of a wing? A pack that never got its ink because history took the pen? "We can trace the path," Cinder said, answering the unasked. The archive door opened to a corridor of letters, fragments. It names a broodmother not on our rolls. It speaks of the Ember Gate, not a metaphor, a place. Aurelia hummed, and the glass did that tiny sympathetic buzz it did when her resonance leaned in. The Ember Gate opens on a drift between sectors, a pocket space we sealed when we fled. We assumed everything inside was ash. Lena's hand sought the embroidered rail of her bridge drawing, as if checking that her finger-painted crossing could handle a new river. What if someone's been singing there, waiting for us to hear it again? No one said what children sometimes say by accident, the most terrifyingly hopeful thing in the room. Gate coordinates are difficult, Frost said, bringing up a star field that rearranged itself in the fussy way maps do when they mean expensive trips. But the lullaby acts as a beacon. The harmonics pull. Rose's voice slid in from the comm line, steady and already planning 3 contingencies past everyone else. Exploration unit can be wheels up by morning. Human pilots paired with dragon escorts. Light touch, heavy caution. Aurelia's gaze stayed on Lena. First friend, she said softly, as if testing the title against air. We do not bring children to doors we expect to be traps. I know, Lena whispered, not hiding the disappointment. Then she squared, a small commander reporting to herself. You'll tell me everything when you get back. Everything, Aurelia promised. And this time her smile was visible even to human eyes. The festival drifted upward, laughter finding the observation ring, the band figuring out how to let a hive chorus lead a bridge. Someone passed by with a platter of fruit cylinders, scenting the air with pear and cinnamon nostalgia. Evan took one and broke it in half, handing the bigger piece to Lena because some traditions are older than treaties. On the pane, Lena's fog-drawn bridge had started to fade. She refreshed it with a quick breath, then added a little door in the middle, the kind you'd paint bright red if you were the kind of person who believed doors should be easy to find. For the Ember Gate, she said, pleased with herself. A small tremor rolled through the spire's bones as docking clamps released somewhere below. Ships took their places around the old new melody. Dragons flexed heat that meant homecoming, not warning. The lullaby, human simple, dragon vast, threaded the hallway like a rumor that wanted to become a headline. People slowed without knowing why. Even the machine sleeping in the rehab lab stirred, architectures registering the tune as a non-hostile directive. Stand down. Listen. Evan rested his forehead against the cool glass beside his daughter's drawing. 5,000 years of flight, a morning's mission plan, and a song that should never have been shared but was. The galaxy did not feel smaller. It felt like a story that had decided not to end where the chapter break once was. Aurelia reached out one talon and, absurdly, perfectly, traced the red door Lena had sketched. We will knock, she said, and we will listen before we speak. Good, Lena said. That's the rule. Threx chuckled, surprised at himself for finding the sound in his chest. The rule, he agreed. The lullaby shifted key, aligning with navigational beacons. Pyros brightened on the horizon the way a hearth does when someone lifts the kettle just before it boils. Doors remembered. Bridges held. Somewhere far away, something heard its name said kindly for the first time in an age. Aurelia straightened, heat gathering like a blessing. Time, she said, and the word tasted like courage. When the Ember Gate opens, what steps through? A friend we forgot, a promise we broke, or a truth that rewrites who found whom first? The launch felt like a held breath finally exhaled. 3 human corvettes, sleek, matte, their hulls humming with Lena arrays, took formation around 2 dragons. Aurelia in the lead, Frost on the starboard shadow where temperature drops could serve as signal and shield. The lullaby, braided now into a navigational hymn, threaded every channel. It wasn't loud, but it filled the gaps between orders the way a good road fills the space between towns. All ships. Confirm, Admiral Rose said, voice steady, unhurried, the tone of someone who had practiced calm until it became muscle memory. Corvette Red Wing. Green across, Captain Diaz replied. Corvette Serene, green and grateful, joked Yarricade, who always named her status like a weather report. Corvette Mendel green. Lena resonance at 0.94 peak, stable. Frost curled a ribbon of vapor around Mendel's port fin as if blessing it for safe passage. We fly on the remembering song, he said. Do not outshout it. Aurelia's heat signature lifted the squad like a sunrise, locked on the gate's harmonic seam, she intoned. Do not touch your fear with your hands. Let it pass. Back on the Concord Spire, Lena's palms pressed to the viewing pane so hard the skin went starfish white. Evan stood behind her with the careful stillness of fathers trying not to flinch at distances they can't fix with a seatbelt. The festival below had thinned to clusters. Even joy yields to reverence when old doors rattle. Threx glanced at Lena's fog-sketched bridge, refreshed, retouched, now bearing a bright red door drawn with fresh breath. "Your drawing has become doctrine," he murmured, not unkind. "That's how rules start," she said without looking away. "Somebody draws a better way to cross." Nairi's chorus, split across the ring in 3 small groups like lanterns left along a trail, hummed harmonics that matched the lullaby exactly. Their voices braided with human throat and dragon resonance until the air on the spire shivered like a plucked string. Space around the expedition distorted first at the edges, stars smearing into commas as if punctuation were announcing a sentence you had to read slowly. The lullaby shifted key. Frost answered in a counter melody so low the Corvette hulls translated it as a tactile thrum underfoot. The smear of light tightened into a seam, then a seam into a slit, then the slit into a door that did not open out or in so much as sideways, like a book you realize you've been holding upside down. "The Ember Gate," Aurelia said, "but soft for names or levers." Serene's helm officer swallowed audibly on the open line. "Reading temperature inversion. That can't be right." "Pocket space," Frost said. "Our rules once. Not precisely hostile, merely other." "On my mark," Ro commanded. 1, 2, mark. They crossed. The first impression was color, not orange like pyros, not black like space, but a saturated ember glow that seemed to come from the idea of light rather than any one source. The second was sound. The lullaby returned to them from everywhere at once, delayed by just enough to prove the place had corners. The third was the size of it wrong. The Corvettes registered distances in contradictory units. Aurelia's wings said the way forward was close and far and exactly as long as it needed to be. "Maintain interval," Diaz called. "If your instruments disagree with your eyes, believe the song." In the Spire's war room, Hayes ran a finger down a flexible display that kept insisting on curves where straight lines should be. "We're inside a memory," they said, half to the room, half to the discipline that raised them. "Architected recollection, dragon-made and sealed. The lullaby is a key in a lock that remembers different hands." "Hands?" Threx asked, eyebrow ridges rising. "Metaphor," Hayes said. "Don't steal my poetry." The corridor unfolded in tiers like stacked amphitheaters rotating very slowly around a quiet center. Frozen in each tier were images flattened into relief, dragon memory made into sculpture and then dissolved into air, younglings sleeping in rings around a quiet hearth, a clutch mother painting constellations with ash on the floor, a human silhouette at the edge of the picture, no face, just the proportions. The tall awkwardness of our kind holding out a jar of water to a dragonling with a cracked scale. "Pause," Ro said, and everyone obeyed because even All listens to that voice. "Recording." Cinder's breath caught over the open channel. Brood name on the arch, ash within ash. "Lost in the first great fire. The human vector present. I was afraid we were following rumor. We are not," Aurelia's head dipped. "We sealed this place to stop the ache from leaking. We forgot that ache distilled into instruction." "Movement," Cade said, quiet and sharp. "Low starboard." Redwing swung a light grid. "Not beams, these learned by now." A curtain of non-invasive fluorescence brushed the tier. The light caught on a cluster of objects like cocoons made of cooled slag. Each one pulsed faintly in time with the lullaby. "Are those?" Diaz didn't finish the sentence because his grammar melted. "Eggs," Frost said. The word made the space around him kneel. Not alive, not with bodies. Alive like a held note. Dreaming modules seated with youngling patterns. We must have made them in flight, when we feared extinction. Hoping a future could finish the work a present could not. "Why seal them?" Ro asked. "Because every hand that tried to help wrenched," Aurelia answered. "Because we were tired of being taken apart for our parts." Lena arrays on the human ships chimed in a tone the crews had learned to recognize as, "Yes, this is safe, if you are not a fool." In the Spire, Lena pressed her face to the glass and forgot to breathe until Evan's hand found her shoulder. "We can sing them out," she whispered, to no microphone at all, and the room heard her anyway. "Extraction plan," Rose said briskly. "No heat spikes, no claims. Our language should be request, not demand." "Then let us ask," Aurelia said. She folded her body so that her chest hovered just above the cocoons and began to hum. Not the lullaby, but the thing under it, the drone of kinship. Frost layered in the counternote that told sleep when